Todd, thank you so much for coming on the AIM podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
I'm pumped about this episode. This is the first time you and I are getting a chance to have a deeper conversation, but it sounds like from the research I've done and just kind of observing what you've done, man, first off, congrats. But also, I think there's a lot of things that we have in common, which I'm excited to talk about.
Yeah, man, it sounds like it. I mean, walk-ons have to stick together, so it's like a fraternity.
It is, dude. It really is. There's a book, Walk On Mentality. I don't know if you've read that book,
I have
but
read that. Yeah,
it's special, man. And I mean we can even dive right in because I think that's something that I would love to hit on with you and kind of like I said, just doing a little more research into who you are and what you've done, man. It's special to see someone that's gone through that process and then found that success and then obviously done a lot of great things like what you're doing now. But would love to just kind of open it up to you to hear a little bit more, maybe for the people that aren't as familiar with your story, what that looked like for you getting to Michigan and kind of going from there.
yeah. So I mean, so I grew up in Michigan, Michigan State fan my entire life, and I really never thought I'd have the opportunity to go there. Never in my wildest dreams. So I'm from a small school, Napoleon, Michigan. I mean, my hometown has a blinking red light. Like we don't even have a stoplight to give you to give you reference. We don't have fast food, so it's small, and not a lot of athletes have come out of there. So no dream. I mean, like when I said I dreamed to play in Michigan State, like it was a little dream. It wasn't even like on my radar. And it's kind of crazy the story or the way that it all unfolded. How I got my opportunity is we had 7-on-7 at like the biggest school in Jackson High. It's a massive, the biggest school in Michigan. They just built an 80-yard indoor facility, insane public school.
Wow, that's crazy.
They had like, they've had Antonio Bass come out of there, 5-star recruits, some of the top recruits. I mean, Antonio Bass, one of the best recruits ever, who went to Michigan. But I played line because I was heavy. I was an overweight kid like my whole life. And then in high school, I started lifting on my own, like before school. I was the only person. My dad was a teacher, so I had a key to the weight room. And I would lift on my own at 6 a.m. like before school. And I just started kind of changing my body and realizing like, well, obviously when you're an overweight kid and aesthetically you start to get motivated, but also just sports, like I started getting better. I really didn't peak till like my senior year. So for college, like, I mean, D3 would have been like, I don't know if I would have played at a D3 school. And I still don't know if I would have been great if I would have went there just based on the circumstances. But I uh I ended up we had a 7-on-7 at Jackson High, the biggest school. I ended up going just to like kind of support. Like my best friend was a quarterback. I was gonna do some snaps in case like I had to play center or somebody got hurt. And we didn't have a tight end show up. And I had gotten really athletic and I was super lean. I was like 220, like, probably 6'3", and like, could move well and catch. I just never played tight end. Filled in and made some one-handed catches, like made a bunch of plays. The head coach of Jackson High happened to be watching. And then fast forward probably 7 months later, right? Um, Michigan State had some walk-on spots available. The recruiting coordinator, Don Fredwell, he was the offense coordinator, went to Jackson High and was like, hey, do you have anybody that might have some D1, low D1 offers, D2 offers that would be interested in maybe taking a walk-on spot? And he's like, of anyone in Jackson County, you should go talk to Todd Anderson out of Napoleon, just because he saw me, make a couple plays in that one
Wow.
7-on-7 that wasn't supposed to be at. And I was a good athlete. I was all state in baseball and wrestling, but so like I was on the radar. It wasn't like I was this unknown guy. So I get called to the office and, I'm pumped if it's a D3 school. All of a sudden I walk up and the Michigan State helmet is on this guy's shirt. And I'm like, I really had no idea why he was there. I was like, I couldn't even speak. I was just trying to figure it out. I thought maybe he was an academic guy trying to get me to go to school, something like that.
Yeah.
Uh, he starts talking to me about preferred walk-ons and how the process works, but I didn't have any idea how any of that worked. And yeah, so we started talking about it. And then I went home and, I was pretty set to go to Adrian College, this D3 school. And then my mom, she's an elementary principal. We made like a pros and cons list. And, the one thing that stuck out was like, will you regret it if you don't try to play Michigan State?
Mm.
And that's kind of how I got there. And about the fourth day of camp, I regretted about everything about that decision. I called and I was like, I don't think I can do this. I'm the slowest, the weakest, like the worst football player here. I made a mistake. and I don't think I can do this. And that was the low, but from that point forward, I kind of just chipped away at it.
I love it, dude. I think that's an incredible story. And it's so cool to see, yeah, just how things can happen when you're in the right place at the right time and you just put yourself out there. And it's like one small decision in your life can absolutely change the trajectory of everything you do.
100%. That's like the small pebble in the pond or the river that just like shifts the entire future. And that was one. If I didn't show up to that 7-on-7, who knows if I would have been there.
Seriously, dude, that's crazy, man. It's cool. I think there's like two types of walk-ons. I think there's some guys and girls or whatever that get to the opportunity and they're just kind of happy to be there. And it's just like,
Yeah.
man, I'm blessed, fortunate with the opportunity. Maybe it was a connection or whatever. And that's cool. I'm not hating on that. But I think there's another group of walk-ons that have that mindset. It's like, look, I haven't been given anything. The only thing I've been blessed with is an opportunity. There's nothing guaranteed. There's no playing time. There's no money. Like
Yeah.
I gotta go earn every single thing that I get. And it sounds like you kind of had that mindset. Obviously, there's going to be highs and lows. There's going to be times where like, man, this kind of sucks. But like ultimately for you to get to where you were stepping on campus to how you left, which I'm excited to hear about, you had to have that mindset throughout.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I couldn't be the guy that was happy to be there because for me to even remain there was a stretch to me. Like in my mind, I was so out of my league, and I actually was so out of my league. Like I'm not exaggerating, um, but in my mind, like even to stay on the team, I had to earn it. So as soon as I got there, like I had that pressure on myself because I mean, there's a Division One, the program like Michigan State, a lot of people want to play there, so they have a lot of walk-ons that are really talented, and it wasn't a guarantee you're going to get asked back next year. So I was almost forced to have that when I came in, and honestly, like I thought if I bust my ass the entire time, I might get to play on special teams my senior year. Like that's where I thought I was at. But then as I got there and you surround yourself, you throw yourself kind of into the ring with people, you start to adapt and acclimate and you realize like, oh, I think I can do this. Like these people are human. They started somewhere. You start putting extra work in and you realize like, I think I can play. I think I have the talent. I think I have the abilities. And you just start building momentum. And that's what I did. But it was tough, man. Every time I built momentum, like I felt like my knees got chopped out from under me. I mean, literally and figuratively, because my first year I get there, I mean, my first year was a horrible experience, like academically, culture shock, like new people, classes, early lifts, like not sleeping, you living in the dorm, all this stuff just pile on top of me. Tough experience. Figured it out after the first semester. And then in spring ball, I moved to DN my first year and I did really well. And I was like, oh, I can do this. Like I went from a nobody to end of spring ball. Like I was running with second string at DN. And then it comes to fall camp, mess rounds. We have like sprints and summer conditioning. And I pulled my quad like 2 weeks before camp, which isn't a huge deal. It was just like a routine, like, okay, just rest it a couple weeks, you'll be fine. It's feeling better. 3 days before camp, get out of the shower, slip and like fall into like a hurdle stretch position, and my quad just goes like boom. And it to this day, I mean, if you ever see me, I have a giant ball on my quad, and I get stopped every airport security. I get patted down because it's like it's still all balled up.
Jeez.
So I'll never forget. I didn't know what to do. I was so nervous, and I'm going to get a chance. Second string is a full ride, and in football, it's full scholarship or nothing. So show up to camp. First day of camp is a conditioning test, 20 half gassers, which is across the field and back. So basically a 105-yard sprint. And I remember Coach D'Antonio came up to me and he was like, we're going to give you a chance, like to start, basically is what he was implying. And I'm sitting there thinking like, my leg is not okay right now, but I got to do this. So I tore my rectus femoris, which is like the only quad that crosses the knee and the hip, right? So if you flex your hip a little bit, it takes tension off that one quad muscle. So I ran these 20 sprints like slightly bent over so people couldn't really see me, because when you're starting and then you're stopping and starting again, you're never fully extended, like only maybe like 10, 15 yards. So I just kind of bent over a little bit the whole time, ran all 20 gassers, woke up the next day, and my leg was, I'm not kidding, black and blue, like from my hip to my foot. It was wild. I wish I still had pictures. So that pretty much wrecked that season. Next season, come back, still playing DN. I'm like starting on a third down package. And like 7 days before our first game, like cut on this, we ran this blitz called Atlanta. I'll never forget it. And it was like a boundary blitz come. So I had to like go from the edge to the A gap. And I made this like pretty steep cut. And I just felt like a pop in my knee. And it turned out like I popped off some cartilage on my femur, the head of my femur. So I had surgery like 2 days before our first game. And I never forget, like, I went to the game and it was like the worst moment. So I've cried about this moment, so I'll try not to cry here. But I wanted to play so bad, and they're like, come to the game to support it. But I just had surgery the day before, so I was on the sideline for warm-ups. But they're like, it's not safe for you to be down here if you get hit. So I just remember crutching away from the stadium, and I can hear like the kickoff going off. And like if you've ever been outside of a stadium when the game starts, it's like a ghost town because everyone's in there.
Right.
And it was like a movie scene, like just walking away, and it was horrible. So
Jeez.
that was my that was now in my third year, right? So I redshirted my first year, second year quad, third year knee, right? So now I'm going into my fourth year, and I still haven't played. And all these people like doubted me from my own town the entire time. I thought I was nuts for going there,
For
right?
sure.
And now I'm like telling people, I'm like, I swear I'm good enough to play, right? And people just think, oh, he's on the team, that's cool, like, but he's never going to play. And that's kind of when it all clicked. I came out, I was starting on a third down package. I got some good playing time at DN my junior year, and then Coach Antonio came to me before my senior year, and he's like, we got to figure out a way to get the best 11 guys on the field, and I think putting a fullback is a way that we can make that happen. And so they switched me over during spring ball or during bowl prep when we played Alabama, and then the next year I started a fullback, and that was definitely my natural fit. I wish I would have played that the entire time, but yeah, it's kind of how it went.
That is wild, bro. I mean, it's crazy to think that you even made it that far. This is a walk on, but had to deal with all that adversity.
Actually, when I had my knee surgery, it was not good. So it was like 6 months after the surgery, I couldn't even shuffle. Like I couldn't do anything. And I remember telling Kirk Cousins, because he was our quarterback, I was like, dude, I think that I'm done. Like I think I'm gonna have to like give it up. Like I can't run. Like I can't play. And my thing, like I was at the time playing DN, so like I was fast and agile and like a linebacker type guy. So I couldn't overpower people anyways. I had to be able to run. And I was like, dude, I think I'm done. Um, and then I'm like, I'm gonna try. So my first spring practice, I like came off the edge and I hit snapping sound, which I'm like, here we go, that's it. And I was fine. I'm like, I don't know what's going on. So the next day, I'll never forget the moment. It was wild. So in the beginning of our list, we always start with like a lateral shuffle across the field, like nice and easy. I could never do it.
Jeez.
Go to shuffle, and like all the pain was gone, like completely gone. So they think that I like had all this scar tissue that built up during the surgery, and it just popped it out of place, and everything was fixed. So from that point on, I felt completely fine, and it was incredible. And like I kept like I was having this like out of body experience during the lift, like checking it, testing it if it felt okay, and I couldn't really express myself, but I have no idea what happened, but very thankful it did.
Jeez, that's crazy, man. That's a wild story.
Yeah.
What was your so then what was your process like closing in on the end of your senior year at Michigan State and preparing for the NFL?
Yeah, so I started getting like looks from the NFL like throughout the season. My first couple games I had awesome games, some of my best games. And we had some first rounders on the team, like Jarrell Worthy was, I think he's like beginning of the second round. So NFL scouts are at practice every day. And he came up to me like after the third game, he's like, yeah, the scouts keep asking about you. And I was like, what? Like, I didn't, that wasn't even in my head still at that point. And then as time grew, more and more scouts would ask, and then they started talking to me. Then I had a lot of interest from different teams, and as the draft process leads up, you get more and more interest, obviously. But by the third game left in the season, I was ready. I talked to agents. I was going to sign with an agent, so it was a whirlwind. I went from just scratching and clawing, making sure I'm going to actually start, to mid-season talking to NFL teams, which I had no idea that that was even a possibility. And so I had the opportunity to go train in Naples, Florida at Velocity. I mean, it's the best experience ever for me. And Coach D was actually kind of pissed at me because I had like 7 credits left, right? But I left early to go train, but he didn't realize, and it's not obviously like it's my fault, but I always knew I wanted to be in strength conditioning. So I viewed this as like a once in a lifetime opportunity to almost like an internship and learn.
Sure.
And I learned from this guy, Derek Touche, who was an awesome mentor and still is. But so I went down there with that attitude, like, yes, I'm training, but I'm also absorbing all this information because I know this is what to do. And it was sick. I mean, you train in 2-3 times a day. You had a chef, you're living in Naples, Florida, like as a college kid, like that's as good as it gets, So did that. Ended up getting signed as a free agent. I had a couple options, and I went with the Rams. But still, it's just like a whirlwind, man. Like you don't even know what's going on. Like you don't know how like no one's telling you how these processes work and the behind the scenes, and like you just kind of live day by day. So, as an athlete, like I think some people give athletes a little bit too much credit. Like they don't. A lot of times, they're just living in the moment. You don't really have the big picture perspective at the time.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. I mean, that's something that, I've tried to do as much as I can to go back to where I played and like just help some of these guys understand, like eventually you're going to make a transition outside of the sport. And while you guys all want to play professionally, like you need to at least start to kind of understand the process and the systems and the different things you can be doing now, such as like building relationships and just getting exposure to things you're passionate about. Like you were saying, like what you did makes a ton of sense. Like you knew you wanted to do that. You got down. That was a great opportunity for you to keep pushing, but also to start getting those connections and relationships. When was it? And like, at what point in your career did you kind of realize you wanted to eventually go into strength and conditioning and like coaching athletes?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like in high school, I wasn't sure what I wanted. I would say maybe like freshman year of college. I thought I wanted to be a strength conditioning coach, like a college strength conditioning coach. And I thought that for a long time, probably until about my senior year, I would say. And, I have so much respect for strength conditioning coaches. I mean, a college strength and conditioning coach is kind of like, as far as like science and data and nerding out on that stuff, is the ideal situation because one, you have these freak athletes, two, unlimited resources at a big program, and three, like you don't really have many outside influences when creating like the ideal program for an athlete, right? So like when you're in the private sector, even if you're training athletes, there's not an entertainment value, but you have to keep people engaged, and people don't like doing stuff that they don't want to do repetitively. So there's this push and pull of like, okay, we have to give a little here to keep them around. Whereas if you're a college strength conditioning coach, like you're creating the optimal program, regardless of what anybody else thinks, which is rare, right? And they're going to do it at their max capacity. So I feel like that's a rare opportunity. I thought that was pretty cool. But I think, as I got away from it, just, there's a lot more involved as being a college strength conditioning coach. Now it's changed a bit. It's more like an NFL setup. But, it used to be basically you were the disciplinarian and you were like the day-to-day guy, right? You're there from 5 to 5 every day. The coaches are out recruiting. They're not around in the off season, and you're doing all the grunt work and, dealing with a lot of the problems and issues. And that side of things didn't appeal to me. And then just the process financially to get to a position that's, I don't want to say worth it, but where you're, doing the things you want to do and living comfortably. And then even at that point, there's no stability, right? Your head coach gets fired, boom, you're probably done. So just the lifestyle didn't make sense to me long term. And I'm glad I made a decision. I think I love what I'm doing now. And it's kind of get a little bit of best of both worlds.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. College strength coaches are cool though. I'll say to this day, I redshirted my sophomore year, and the current strength coach we had at the time was like by far my favorite coach I've ever worked with. We trained together every single day. I wasn't playing, so I was lifting crazy. We were doing like everything. We were doing sleds in the winter when it was like crazy cold. Like just that bond you create with someone that invests that much time in you is really special, assuming it's like the right person.
Yeah, I had a guy like that, Coach Hoke, Tommy Hoke. He was our assistant strength coach, and when I was hurt, he'd work with me one-on-one extra time. And like, if I didn't have him, I don't think I could have came back from those injuries. And then Coach Manny, who was at Michigan State for 20 years, Coach Saban begged him to come to LSU, Alabama, but he made it through like so many coaches. But every guy, that's the thing. That's the thing that is amazing about strength conditioning in college is like every guy that gets up on a podium when they're graduating always thanks the strength coach because like that's when you mold somebody into the person they're going to be. It's not in position meetings. Like you look at the amount of time spent with the strength coach, it's unbelievable. And I think that so many life lessons are learned in that arena.
For sure. No, I totally agree with that. Now, post career, you get out, you're doing your training, you're crushing that. At what point did you and your, I guess now wife come together? Because now y'all do stuff together as well,
Yeah.
right? Training. How did
Yeah.
that kind of happen?
So during COVID, everything was kind of in flux and, swimmers, all the pools are shut down, right? And Olympic Games were coming up and everyone's kind of freaking out. So my wife decided to start doing like these live workouts for swimmers, basically like on Zoom type thing. And she would have different guests. She had Katie Ledecky, Elizabeth Beisel, all these different people come on and do a workout with her. And they'd have like a couple thousand swimmers tune in because there's nothing else you could do.
Right.
So she's just cranking workouts with people 3 times a week on Zoom. And then, more and more people start reaching out to us for what they call dry land. So, I mean, swimming calls dry land. Anything out of the pool is dry land. So I'm just like
a normal workout for anyone else.
Like a strength conditioning. Like into something else. It's like when you work out, it's implied it's on the land. Like,
right.
But anyways, that was such a weird term. So yeah, so I started to realize, in any other sport, right, you have a strength conditioning coach, and then you have like your basketball coach or your football coach, and it is totally unfair to expect like the football coach to be an expert in strength conditioning. Like they're completely different animals, and
right.
That was the case in swimming. So in swimming, like club teams are like if you're a really good swimmer, you're going to swim on a good club team in high school. So kind of high school swimming takes a back seat. Club swimming is really where the competition is. So a lot of these club teams like don't have the strength conditioning support, and then the swim coaches end up doing it, and then that's not fair to them. And so nobody's really getting the best of the programming on the strength conditioning side. So, we saw a huge opportunity just based on when people were reaching out and telling us. So we decided to start this company, Synergy Dryland. And so we kind of go in and take over the strength conditioning program, remote and work through their coaches and do assessments and provide them, the best program when we can, because like we see ourselves as swim strength conditioning experts, and they're the experts in swimming, right? So, unloading that, taking that off their plate. And it's been a really great system, and we've had teams see awesome success.
That's huge, dude. Yeah, that's super interesting. Do you like to swim personally?
I'm horrible. I sink like a rock. I've tried. I mean, I haven't put much time into it because I'm like so bad. It's so defeating when I get in the water, but yeah, it's just not for me. Also, like my legs are pretty big, so I just feel like I'm not buoyant. It's not good.
That's fair. But you're good. You're good with the dry land workouts.
Yeah, I can do the dry land workouts. Can you swim?
No, dude. I mean, so I got done playing college basketball, and I was like, this is the first time in my entire life that I can now choose how I want to train and what kind of fitness I want to do and whatever. And so ultimately I ran a marathon, not this past December, but the December before that. And I was like, this is kind of cool, but I didn't like just running. Obviously, similar to you, I'm sure like I need some sort of strength component to training. I need to feel like feel strong. And so I kind of didn't want to go down that route of just being a full-on marathoner. But I do at some point want to do an Ironman. I think it would be cool to just accomplish that and be able to kind of, put your body through that. So at some point I'm going to have to figure it out. So maybe I'll come with you guys.
There you go. What marathon did you run?
I did the Kiowa Highland Marathon, south of Charleston, South Carolina.
And what'd you run?
So it was crazy. I ended up running a 3:27, which
nice.
It's solid, but it wasn't like I felt I could have done a lot better. There was so many things. I went into the race just being completely like honest with you and transparent, like very naive to the challenges of endurance training and running and just like, fueling, pacing. There were so many things I didn't understand.
It's crazy.
Even getting a proper warm up, like those were three big things that I feel like I missed the mark. And like those things can truly affect your outcome. And So it was tough. Yeah, I ran the first half like 129, so I was on pace for sub 3, and I was feeling good. And then I got smacked on this half, just
Yeah,
full
man.
full leg lock up cramps, and just didn't feel right. And just, but that's the fun part about it. Like there's so much about it. It's like you can prepare physically, you can feel like you're the fittest person out there, but if you don't do the other components of success, you're not going to have a good outcome. So
What was the longest run you did prior to the marathon?
yeah, in the training block, I did a 22-mile
Oh, so
run.
like you kind of knew what you're getting into.
Yeah, and but the training, another element too, is I was training in Western North Carolina in the mountains during the winter, or
Mhm.
like I guess November, early December, and it was super cold and like higher altitude. And then I go down to the south part of South Carolina, and it was humid, and it was obviously near the coast. It was a totally different like kind of environment, so that definitely kind of had a role in it. But yeah, dude, I mean, like I want to do it again. It was a eye-opening, like humbling experience to get through that, and it was fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, yeah, I went and watched the New York Marathon this year, which if you haven't, I mean, one, so I'm going to run it at the end of the year, but if you ever need motivated to run a marathon, like it's such a cool race. Like, they finish in Central Park and you kind of get the whole tour of the city. It's sick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we went this year and it was like crazy warm for the time of year. It was like 70 degrees and everyone's like,
Wow.
oh my God, it's so hot. And I'm like, it's 70 degrees. Like, what are you guys talking about? Like, it's gonna be perfect. And then just watching people like struggle because they're not, it is really hot for the time of year.
Yeah.
People were hurting. And, but you should definitely check out New York Marathon. It's, it's a really cool event.
Yeah. No, I definitely want to do that. I think that'd be great. I want to talk to you though now about obviously you're training people, you're giving a ton of value, you're helping a lot of athletes, but you yourself have goals and drive and ambition. I want to talk about your current challenge that you're working on right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's kind of a wild plan. I don't have a really great reason why I came up with it, but I felt like, I've worked with a lot of marathoners and we're training a big group and I've worked with some pretty good people. So I'm like, I feel like I need to do it once in my life, right? Just to experience it.
Sure.
And I become good friends with Ken Rideout. So he always, just being in his world, I think it's good to try new stuff. And I know I wasn't gonna like crush the marathon. I didn't want to just focus on that. So I was like, okay, like what are some strength goals I can put with it to like really challenge myself? So I landed on, if I can wake up before bench 405, deadlift 605, and then run a sub 4 hour marathon. I feel like that'd be a huge win and accomplishment. And I set those. I think some people maybe thought that the strength goals were like, oh, I had that in the bag. Like I'm basically gonna walk, you just have to wake up early and go hit those reps. But like those are also like lofty for where I'm at. So it's going to be
That's a lot
hard.
of weight, dude.
Yeah, it's a lot of weight. And I'm also, I'm right there strength wise, but also my miles are going to ramp up tremendously. So just, strength to weight ratio, how much weight can I keep on, but also like be able to run. So it's going to be an interesting like push and pull dynamic, like totally different ends of the spectrum. And yeah, I don't know if I can do it. It's definitely lofty. It's not a for sure thing, but it's been a cool process, man. The mental side of running it's been enlightening more than I would have ever guessed. Man, when you're like suffering at like a 7 or 8 out of 10, and you're sitting there in your head and you're like, I'm gonna be here for the next, hour, just like this. Like that's some time with yourself to figure out who you really are.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I mean, there were so many things that I learned in that short period of time training for the marathon that I like didn't even realize. Like obviously similar to you, I mean, basketball and football are different, but like we never ran those
No.
type of distances. We never did that kind of endurance training. So
No,
it's,
it's like just like go as hard as you can, and
yeah,
then until you're gassed, and then recover, and then like do it again. That's it.
exactly. Exactly. So, I mean, what exactly does your train? I mean, that's an insane goal to get your body to be in a position, hopefully, to be able to do that and this. Like, what does your training look like on a weekly basis? Like, how are you kind of breaking it down?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm definitely blessed in the fact that in the running world, I'm surrounded with some of the most elite people. So I'm getting like the most over the top treatment as far as my first running experience. I have like Des Linden helping me who won Boston, Ken Rideout, Mario Fraioli, all these people who are like, Ken's the fastest in the world over 50. Des has been the best in the world. Mario is like a world-class run coach. So
Yep.
luckily I have the best support system I could ever have because it's going to be tough. But I wrote my strength program because I'm doing all the strength conditioning stuff. So I'm basically doing, we're the running right now because we're pretty far out. We still have about 16 weeks. I'm doing like 4 times a week where I have like like long runs on Saturdays or Sundays, and then 3 times some type of interval work. And then the in between days, I just try to get some recovery miles on my feet, like maybe 30 if I'm feeling okay, 60 minutes, like at a really slow pace, because it's still really hard for me just to jog slow. Like, it's just
Yeah.
like wattage and power output. I'm heavy. I'm like 240, 245 pounds.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So it's tough, man. So I run like almost every day, but like harder runs like 3 to 4 times a week. And then I'm lifting like probably 6 times a week. But I'm doing a conjugate program. So a lot of, I'll do 2 max effort days where I'll take it up to some type of max effort variation of like a deadlift or a bench press, and then 2 dynamic efforts where I'm doing like maybe 8 sets of 3 or 9 sets of 2 of like speed work. So like maybe banded deadlifts or bench, and I use chains. So I'm able to like keep up the intensity and work on peak power, but I don't get sore to the point where my legs are like shattered and I can't have the endurance to go through some of those longer runs. But it's a balance, man. It's been, from a program perspective, one of the most challenging things to put together for sure.
Yeah. No, I can't imagine. How's your body been responding so far? Like, have you seen from where you started to where you are right now, have you seen like different changes, or have you like identified different areas, or like, whoa, this is crazy.
Yeah. Well, I'll say that surprisingly, my body, I feel great.
Yeah.
The biggest thing for me was honestly getting the right shoes was an absolute game changer. I mean, I probably tried, I don't know, like 10 pairs of shoes. I reached out to Steve Weatherford because, I'm friends with Steve and we're
Big.
about the same size. And so like he like texted me back and he was like, dude, I've tried like 27 pairs of shoes this year. And so we landed on some like Hoka's and they worked amazing for me too. So I mean, anyone that's looking to do it, I feel like if you don't have the right shoes, it's kind of the start of the chain, right? And everything like falls apart if your feet don't feel good. So getting that was a game changer, and that helped me in running in general, just because I feel like I was holding so much tension in my calves and stuff. And then I guess what's been surprising, my hunger levels have been off the charts. That's been surprising. I'm usually not a super hungry guy. I don't eat as many calories as people probably think, but super hungry. And then just like I've been surprised at how much your body like just learns efficiency through time on your feet. It's not like I'm like necessarily thinking about form or trying to change a lot of stuff, but you kind of just fall into this pattern and you start to get a flow of things, and your running form, becomes more and more efficient over time. And I didn't realize like how much different it would feel from the beginning and how much more comfortable I would get.
Yeah. Yeah, that is, I think, one of the most interesting things about endurance training is like when your body adapts, it's like that consistent effort just allows you to see these changes and you're like, whoa, like even I think you put up a post, I think you were in New York when you were running and you're like, yo, I'm stoked on this pace.
Yeah.
2 weeks ago through whatever it was, you're like
Yeah.
running 2 minutes slower. And it's like crazy to see that,
Yeah.
improvement.
Crazy. But then, the next run I go out and I have like the shittiest run ever. And I'm like mad for the next 2 days. It's crazy. That's the other thing is like your mind. And that's what I always wonder when it comes down to performance, right? Like your mind plays such a big role, but we can only alter it so much, for the most part. So like for that great run I had, I was in Central Park. There's people, I'm excited. I had a good podcast on, like everything kind of fell in line. And I always wonder, is it, how much physical and mental is it? And if we could really like knock the brakes off the mental side, like what are the limits? Like how much physical limitation is there? I don't know, because even on the mental side, like our biometrics will follow that, right? Like your heart rate will be lower, like when you're mentally feeling better as well. So, I don't think we'll ever be able to figure that out, but it's just always interesting to me, just how things change in your mindset and just how your performance follows.
I think that's interesting. I mean, to that point, it's like, how much should we focus as people on training our minds over our bodies instead of like our bodies over our minds? Because at that point, it's like, how do you get a stronger mind? How do you get in a place where you can control it a little bit better? Is it you suffering more? Is it you putting yourself in these situations where physically or whatever you're just like in pain? Like, I don't know. That's a good question.
And I think too, I think a lot of people like when they talk about mindset, I think they think about like when you're in the dark place, like when you're in pain cave and like you're hurting, how to keep more of a positive mindset. But I think that what I've learned through this experience is the outlook is more important than that, because that bad part, that dark place, becomes dampened when you go into it with a really good outlook. And I don't mean outlook like fake positivity. I mean just like excitement, thinking about why it's important to you, and getting yourself in a mental place that you're ready to like put forth that effort.
Yeah.
Not like clapping and jumping up and down, just like realistic preparation, but like understanding why it's important to you. Then that place doesn't feel as bad. Once you're in that place, yes, you can get better at it, but like you're still not going to feel awesome, right? But I think you can lessen that by the initial outlook and mindset, as opposed to mid run. I think it's hard to shift some of those things.
I agree with that. How, from a recovery aspect, I would love to chat with you a little bit because that's something you obviously are well versed on. You have a lot of
Yeah,
knowledge and the actual science behind some of these recovery tactics. Like everyone can go say, jump in a cold plunge, do the
yeah,
sauna, get sleep. But a lot of your content, which has been really cool to watch and kind of consume, is very much more science-based and educational.
yeah,
What is your kind of plan and attack on recovery? What are some of the things that you're doing and why?
yeah. So I think, I mean, the biggest thing with recovery, I think, is just consistency, and obviously sleep. I think is the foundation for everything. So top to bottom, we always say like sleep is the tide that raises all the ships, right? Like it's the foundation, and there's no way to get around that. So I think working backwards and understand when you're trying to do something like this, like you have to block in at least 8 hours for sleep, like non-negotiable, regardless of like what everything else looks like. So kind of work backwards, but beyond that, like the modalities I work with is, massage therapy. I think is definitely underrated from an actual therapist, not just like the self stuff. Saunas, I do cold plunge, but I don't really do that for recovery. I do red light therapy, but you know, for the most part, recovery. I think recovery is so much more of a sleep, nutrition, and consistency thing than like these action steps that people want to take, right? Like you can apply these stimulus, but it's only a small snapshot. It's only so much time and exposure your body can handle, and it's another stressor, right? Like a cold plunge is a stressor, so you can't just stack up all these stressors. I think it's the things like the sleep and the nutrition that alleviate those stresses, and they allow your body to take on more. So I think you have to be pretty strategic with how you use those things. And a lot of people think of them as like band-aids and things to recover, as in like fix or get back from the performance you're doing. And I don't think that's necessarily the case, if you don't have especially sleep lined up. But the one thing I'll say is like a body in motion stays in motion. And that's absolutely true. Is when people start to get banged up or injured, a lot of times they want to rest. And, in all actuality, some of the best stuff to do is just kind of keep moving and keep trucking along, unless you have a significant injury. But even, there's data to support when you have an injury. They did these different studies where they had people running through the deserts, and they would break their feet and they would just keep running some of these crazy races. I mean, they wouldn't be able to look at some of this stuff now, but and when they just continued on, like they healed at an insanely rapid pace because your body adapts. So I think pure rest is often overrated. And even like walking and active recovery is so much more valuable than just doing some of the resting stuff. But yeah, I do it all. I mean, I do sauna after runs usually, because there's been some new statistics to show that post endurance work, a sauna can add on to some of that endurance long term. I'll do cold plunge in the morning, but it's more of like an energy mindset thing, trying to just to get some light exposure, get my cortisol, like spike my cortisol, and then get it back down to baseline, and to just start my day off with the right energy that I'm looking for. And then I do the red light therapy. It's not a huge part of my day, but there's a lot of there's some healing mechanisms and support for the mitochondria. But I do that in conjunction with the sauna a lot of times, just kind of because you kind of like kill two birds with one stone. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. But I mean, sleep is by far my biggest focus.
Yeah. No, I think it's good. I think that's the one that's almost kind of overlooked right now, as cold plunge and all this stuff's getting so much attention. It's like a lot of people I feel like aren't talking about sleep, which is like we've had that for, the beginning of time. We've always had to sleep. So that's interesting. You also talk about something that I want you to quickly touch on, because I feel like right now a lot of people are trying to pair sauna and plunging together and do
Yeah.
like contrast therapy. And I know there are benefits to doing that.
Yeah.
You also talk about how we can break them apart and kind of get even more
Yeah.
maybe strategic benefits doing that method too.
Yeah.
What's kind of your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends on like what you're going for. And I think people don't necessarily always have a goal when they use those things, and they just kind of like do them to do them. And to be honest, I think a lot of people pair those because it's easier. Like I 100% think that's the case. And it feels better because it's easier, right?
Right.
But like there's a couple approaches to the cold plunge. And there's even a couple approaches within the approaches to the cold plunge, right? So like let's say you want energy, right? Like that's your goal. You want to increase dopamine, norepinephrine, and kind of use that to ramp your nervous system up. So like in that case, like you want to be really cold. You want to almost feel like you're freezing, and you almost want to talk yourself into it being colder than it is, right? And that will create a huge stress response, spike your cortisol, spike the dopamine, spike the norepinephrine, and you'll feel amazing afterwards, right? But then within that same bucket, there's people that are trying to build resilience and grit, with stressors in their life. And that's a whole different mindset, much harder to research. So we have a lot less of it because resiliency is just extremely difficult. It's kind of like when you're an athlete and they're just beating the shit out of you in workouts and they're like, oh, we're going to build toughness. And at the end of that, you think back and you're like, are we building toughness or am I just like beat up at the end of this? Right. And it's
Right.
really hard to study. So it's still like up in the air as far as like how those things work. But I think there's something to it. But the second idea is, okay, I get in the cold plunge, I'm applying this huge stressor, but I'm using these breathing mechanisms to calm myself down and basically, block out these stressors, which is a metaphor, I guess, or it could be substituted for different stressors in your life. Our mind interprets emotional stress, relationship stress, work stress, physical stress very similarly as far as the physiological response. So, the idea is you get in the cold plunge, you apply the stressor, and you're able to regulate yourself and keep yourself calm, cool, and collected. And that will, in theory, apply to different areas in your life, right? But as far as energy goes and dopamine response, you're not going to have as big of a kickback because it's not as big of a stressor if you're able to regulate your nervous system. And that's all it's doing, right? You have two sides of your nervous system. And I think people think it's like a fork, but it's more of like a sliding scale, right? And so when you are not regulating your breathing, you're shivering, you're getting in the cold plunge and really leaning into that cold feeling, you're just ramping your nervous system up, right? Your breathing gets shorter, your inhales get longer than your exhales, and you ramp it up, and that's where you get the energy from. Vice versa, you slow your breathing down. Whenever your exhales get longer than your inhales, you're ramping that nervous system down or cranking it down, sliding it back down the scale. And the idea is apply any stress to that same mechanism, and you're able to regulate that throughout the rest of your life. So same bucket, totally different concepts, different outcomes. Now, I think the problem is with that is like when you throw, and for both of those, let's say you do 20 minutes of the sauna first, right? Like one, it's not going to feel as cold for the one side, so you're probably not going to get as big of a response if you're looking for like the energy side of things. And then on the other side, it's not as big of a stressor. So from a mental training aspect or responding to stresses, you're really not applying as big of a stressor. So I would guess your resiliency wouldn't be as high when you apply other stressors in your life. So that's why I like to separate the two, because I think you get the most out of the one modality as opposed to, I think a lot of people, what they do literally is they go in the sauna for a little bit to warm up, and then they get in the cold plunge, but they don't get that cold because they're still a little warm from the sauna. And then they'll go back and forth, and like they never really get to a point where they're maxing out either one. But I think that's key. If you're going to do contrast, I think it's important to get hot and cold, allow yourself to feel those feelings if you're going to do it. Like me and we've done some stuff with like Jesse Itzler and Tim Snee and Devin and Jimmy from Super Coffee. We did some stuff and we're all on the same page. We're like, we'll set goals in each, we're like, we'll all get on the same page and we'll be like, okay, we're going to go in for 15 minutes at 210 degrees or whatever. And it's about just like, can we last that long? right?
Right.
And I think that then you really max it out. Like you're getting the heat shock proteins, all the cardiovascular benefits from the sauna when you do it that way. It's just like not telling people not to do it because there's different benefits from contrast. There's some proven benefits recovery wise and soreness and things like that. But if that's what you're looking for, just make sure you're maxing out both sides. Don't just kind of half-ass each one and use the other to combat the negative feelings of vice versa.
That's so fascinating, dude. I appreciate you sharing that because it does make sense. And I don't think a lot of people are talking about just the different approaches, honestly. And like, because I think right now, if you're not super educated on the practice, it's just like you hear people just say do it and you just got and complete it. But like to your point, like breaking it down and determining what is your actual goal and what are you trying to accomplish in this session, I
Yeah.
think determine how you structure it and kind of put them together.
Yeah. And we found too, like, the whole ice bath after a workout thing, a lot of the research is showing like active recovery is just as good as a cold plunge after, as far as soreness and recovery goes. So I've kind of eliminated it from that aspect and use it in different ways because the more you expose yourself to cold, you get more acclimated, right? And you really don't want that. Like you don't want to get to a point where you're like, oh, this is no problem. Like you might get to a point where like your mindset, like you've done it a lot, but you once you start losing that feeling of being cold in that response, all those neuromodulator responses are also going to be decreased, right? It's your brain. So your feelings are just as important as the actual like physiology of it.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. Have you gotten to the point where you do the straw in the cold plunge yet?
Poppy straw, yeah. I mean, the when those like when the sauna Poppy came out with those, like 'cause he came. I mean, I feel like he was one of the first guys. I was there, and it was so hard. I don't know if it's like maybe I don't know. I feel like I probably have bigger lungs than some of the guys, but I had a really hard time with it. I don't know. I'm not claustrophobic, but I can only do like 20 seconds. And then Devin jumps in and he did 3 minutes right out of the gate. But then
That was real.
he couldn't hear for like, I don't know, like a half hour. I think his eardrums got lit. I was like, after I saw that, I was like, nah, I'm gonna pass. I'm gonna pass on that. And we all know there's no data to support what we're doing. This is just stupid. We're always trying to do dumb things, you know. I have done it. I would say there's like some indications like not to do that. Like your brain is very close to the skin in some parts of your head and your skull
Yeah.
and temples. So I don't think that's a great exercise to do for extended periods. I think it can be useful for, again, you want to talk about applying stressors and be able to regulate your emotions. That's maxing it out. So I think from that side, there's benefits short term, but like 3 minutes, I don't know. I don't feel like that could be a good thing.
Noted. That's good to know. I'm not, I won't do
I
that.
feel like I have some of the straws somewhere. I do. I know I do. But man, they're not big. That's the thing too. It's not like a snorkel. It's almost like you take a Bic pen and pull the insides out. That's what it feels like you're breathing through.
Jeez, dude. I'm sure it's probably hard to breathe just normally with through that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. If you're sitting here breathing through it, it's hard. So
Oh man, that's crazy.
yeah.
Good stuff, dude. Well, I really appreciate you doing this. Last thing I kind of want to touch on, and I want to be sensitive to your time, is with Ken Rideout, you guys are doing this Rideout Strong program. You've been brought in to attack the strength component of this program.
Yeah.
Yeah, share a little bit about that, what you guys are doing, and some of the things that you're working on with the athletes.
Yeah. So we're doing it's basically marathon training program, right? And we're running a year-long program. We also have we're running three 10-week cycles within the program. Or you can just sign up for the entire year, which is obviously ideal. And that's kind of like what we preach is consistency over everything, right? That's Ken's whole motto. So we recommend the year-long thing, but we'll peak people up for three 10-week cycles. The first 10-week cycle targets the Nashville Marathon as the ending. Last cycle targets the New York Marathon. If people don't have to do it, but it's a really cool program because we're piecing together. Obviously, I'll do the strength stuff. Mario will do the running stuff. Ken's doing the mindset stuff, but it's more about like building this community that's like, we don't want to build a community that's like participation medals and just happy to be there and, networking, which there will be all that. But like, we want people that are like, I want to get better. Like,
Yeah.
I want to fucking go and get after it and hit a PR, not necessarily win the race, but like, win for you, whatever that may be, right? Like for me, 4-hour marathon is nothing impressive, but for me, I'm going to have to like scratch and claw and get that. And we want people with the mindset that are really looking to get better and build a community of people like that, which is hard to do. So along with that, we're going to bring in speakers. We have some awesome brand sponsors that I wish I could announce a couple, but we're just finalizing it. But we have like, we're going to do some sunglasses with Roca. We have Roan for a lot of the apparel, Stay Sky for the kits, some other companies coming in, but you get a ton of sweet gear, and then Momentous for supplements. But and then we'll have like speakers. So we'll have like my wife Katie, Des Linden, Dustin Poirier, all these big names and runners and stuff come in and speak. So you'll get access to them. And then eventually we'll do events and training camps and stuff like that. So as far as value goes, it's going to be a really cool program. And the other thing is like we're just building more and more relationships. So we're going to add on to the program as the year goes. So people who sign up initially, their value will go through the charts as we add on some more of the stuff because they'll be grandfathered into what we're doing right now.
Let's go, man. That's exciting, man. Congrats to you guys
Yeah.
for all you're doing. That's
Man,
awesome.
thanks. And if you haven't met Ken, I mean, Ken's a pretty electric guy. Hope you should definitely have him on, but he's a character. We become really good friends. We're kind of the yin and yang sometimes. I'm super laid back and he's fiery. So I think we keep each other in check, and it's a good balance.
For sure. No, I was actually gonna ask you, like, how is that relationship working with someone
It's
like that?
funny, dude. He'll call me and I'm like, I'll be like, dude, I just ran this thing in Central Park. I'm feeling really good. And he's like, yeah, like you just gotta like start, like just start getting in shape and like running more. And I'm like, thanks, dude. Appreciate it. He's so elite.
Yeah.
He can't even comprehend sometimes like how it feels to run a 9-minute pace and be happy about that. He's just an absolute savage. The guy had COVID like back in 2020, and he didn't miss one day running. Ran 10 miles every day with COVID, which is a horrible idea. But I'm not advertising that. But that's just the type of guy he is. He's been through a lot. He's one of those guys too. He's from Boston. You can tell, but have you seen the movie The Town?
Uh-uh.
All right, so there's this scene where Ben Affleck comes in and basically they're like crime partners and they rob banks, and they have to take care of this guy. And he walks in, and he's like to his buddy, he's like, you can't ask any questions, and we're gonna hurt some people. And the guy just looks at him and he's like, whose car are we gonna take? And like that's Ken. Like when you're in Ken's circle, like he's ride or die.
Yeah.
And he's just like the stand-up guy. But he keeps his circle tight, and he's fiery. And as far as mindset goes, I think that guy works harder than anybody. Like his whoop scores are like top 3 in the world for anybody.
Jeez,
Number 1 in the United States. Like he's over a 20 strain every single day out of
that's
21.
wild.
It's crazy. I've never seen anything like it. Like he sent it to Whoop because I was like, dude, there has to be something wrong with your algorithm, because the idea is that it adjusts, acclimates to your baseline, right? And I don't know if he broke the algorithm, but he's in the 20s every day. I've never seen anything like it. It should come down over time, but man, the guy, I truly think that he can suffer harder than anybody else out there, and that's why he's so good. And he's also not, he's not 125 pounds. Like, he's a strong guy. He's 165 pounds walking around, breaking records like that. That's not easy to do. It's not like he only can run. He works on other stuff too.
No doubt. Is there one like just big thing that I'm sure you've learned a lot from him in your experience, but is there one just kind of thing that comes to surface? You're like, man, this is a lesson, a characteristic or something about him that I'm like, man, this is pretty powerful.
Man,
that's probably a tough question.
That's a tough question. I mean, I don't know if it's not, exciting, but his consistency when he talks about run, actually, it's crazy. So he'll talk about it. He quit and he did an Ironman, and he quit, and it's the last time he ever quit. And he has a video of him walking off the course, and like he cuts it. And since that day, he's never quit anything.
Wow.
And I think, what I've learned from him is like when I listen to him talk about runs and stuff, like he's so consistent. I think people put him on this pedestal because he's such a good runner that he doesn't feel the same things like an amateur runner does. But when I talk to him about what I'm feeling, he's feeling the exact same things. And he's just able to honestly push through it and put it aside. And I think when you make this decision that you're doing it regardless of how you feel or what's happening around you, um, there's like freedom in that. Like it alleviates the stress and it doesn't allow you to feel as bad as you want to feel, right? Like when you're like, I'm doing this no matter what. So he's done that for years of his life. And I think that that's something I've learned from him is just like, when you set your mind that this is just part of what you do, those lows become a lot less low. And I don't mean lows like psychologically. I mean lows like, when you have a bad day or up that you're not feeling like doing it, when you just commit to it that this is what I do, those kind of go away because you know it's going to happen. So what's the point of like feeling like I don't want to do it because you are. And so I've kind of taken that. And then the other thing is like, man, when I'm struggling, I think about some of the sets he does. I'm just like, man, don't, you know, you're kind of being a little bitch about this right now. So I've learned that from him. He's just like, he does some savage stuff, but it's been
Yeah.
cool, and he's a great dude. And yeah, so we have him moving to Nashville, so it'll be cool. It'll be closer, and we'll be able to collab on some more stuff. And so it'll be fun for 2023.
Let's go, bro. Well, dude, congrats on that, man. I'm excited for you. I cannot wait to follow your personal journey and see you crush this goal. It's going to be a lot of fun. And yeah, like I said, man, I really appreciate you coming on. This has been a fun episode and really appreciate you sharing all that wealth of knowledge and value to our listeners. So
Yeah,
it's
man,
been great.
it's been awesome. Keep rocking it for Walk On Nation, and thanks for having me.
Let's go. Thanks, Todd.
All right, man. Great seeing you. Have a great day.